You sell a script, now what? I feel like that's the story of every screenwriter.
Right.
They go, they write the thing, now what?
First, you get a cigar and a glass of whiskey. That's the first thing you do. And you celebrate the fact that you finished a script. Because a lot of folks don't get to that point. And I believe in celebrating every little milestone, because I think it sets you up for success as you move forward. So you get your whiskey and your cigar, or your wine, or your cinnamon bun, whatever it is that you do. That's what you do first. Then you start putting together what you need in order to either get that piece of material repped by an agent or a manager, or you start piecing together what it is that you want your team, because you want to shoot it independently. And I think all of that depends on the piece and what you as the writer want out of it. Sometimes the writer's also the director, you know what I mean? And so it's more so a thing of, okay, how do I find my team? How do I start putting this together? How do I start breaking this down so that I can shoot it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it all depends, I think, on what you're looking for. You know what I mean? I had written a screenplay that I loved, and I was kind of going through the ringer with different producers trying to figure out how to get it done. And people liked it, but people were sort of reluctant to pull the trigger. And at the time, I was still in my actor mode. And so I ended up meeting some folks that said, hey, listen, why don't we take a portion of this script, like maybe the first 15 pages, and let's just shoot it, do a proof of concept thing. And that ended up being the first thing I ended up directing. And so I shot that proof of concept and made it a short film. You know what I mean? And it was very satisfying.
How did it feel when you were able to, first of all, finish the whole script? And then when you went and shot that first 15 pages and you felt like, okay, I made a thing. What did that feel like?
It was exhilarating. I was terrified because I had never wanted to direct. That was never in my thing. I was actor and then became writer, and that was cool. I didn't want to, you know what I mean? I'm not good with the pictures and I don't, but it became a thing of necessity on this short. I had actually lined up a couple of locations that were really cool. I was getting them for free. I had a time frame, and the director that I had couldn't make that time frame. And so there was no time to find another director, and it had to be directed. So I was like, I'm going to do it.
What did you learn from that experience?
God, so much. I'm trying to figure out.
Trying to think, exactly. And the reason I'm asking is because I feel like a lot of writers could improve their writing substantially, by 10x, if they go and they direct a couple of things, so they can get a sense of what it actually takes to bring something from the page on set and then on the edit.
I feel like that is the most profound thing that I discovered, what you just said, because after that, I ended up directing a few other pieces, full-length things. And the process of what you can write versus what you can shoot was highly educational. And
highly educational. Expand on that.
Well, because it's different. If you are looking to, because what you're saying is true. You're taking this piece of paper and you're putting it up on its feet, which means you have to create legs, you have to create feet, you have to create a voice, you have to create arms, legs, heart. There are all of these things that have to become physical presences that, if you're a writer, you can just write it and walk away. Yeah. Now you have to actually put it up and make it make sense and make it look good and make it viable for someone to shoot. There are things you can forgive when you're reading something that you absolutely will not tolerate if you're watching something.
Yeah.
And that's the director's job. You have to bridge that gap. You know what I mean? So What ended up happening for me in terms of filmmaking, I started to see the structure very differently. So a lot of times people will say, your script has 3 acts, right? And that is true for the most part. But for me, when it came to filmmaking, I had a different 3-act structure. The script being complete to the point where it could be shot was act 1. Directing, shooting, blocking was act 2. And then editing was act 3. And going through the process of all of that and seeing what needed to be changed so that act 3 came out good and what needed to be stayed true to for act 3 to be good. That process of watching the full length of it, just from conception to literally sitting with an editor in a dark room for hours on end and looking at this thing and looking at this thing and looking at this thing and saying, okay, this should go here, this should go there. Where's this shot? What's missing? Where's this? It's an all-encompassing endeavor.
Yeah.
All-encompassing.
Yeah, I feel you 100%. And that's why I think I'm not a great writer. I wrote one full feature on my own, and I've collaborated with other writers on a few other features. Mm-hmm. To me, to be honest, I'm not attracted to the empty page and to go in and sit down and then write. Mm-hmm. But Marcus, I'm deadly good at looking at a script and tweaking it to know that it's going to be well shot and well edited and it's going to work later.
Yes.
I'm really good at that. And I think many writers make the mistake of thinking or hoping that just because they have a good idea in their head and they want to communicate something, it's just going to go on the page and it's already there. I think when you realize that it's a process of elimination, of taking, like a sculpture, you have a big piece and then you take pieces and pieces out, and it's almost more taken out. Usually whenever I get scripts from writers and I'm giving notes, I'm mostly just crossing things out that don't even need to be there because I just want to keep to the most stripped down necessary images and lines and just take out all the fluff and just keep the straight arrow, because you're going to find that all the different nuances and all that will come on set depending on who the actor is and when they come in, how the location is lit and how they're going to interact with each other. And a lot of the beauty of the film will come later. So I feel like if writers could write a little less of all of that usually on their scripts, they'll be better off to see the structure and see step by step.
Well, I think that comes from the experience of watching your work turn into something. And unfortunately, a lot of writers don't get that. They don't have that luxury. Another thing going on with the writer strike is on-set accessibility. A lot of writers that work on films or television shows are not invited to the set. You can, even on different apps and stuff, you watch like a movie on HBO Max or whatever, and then you watch the sort of making of thing, and they'll interview the stars, the director, the producer, the production designer, the wardrobe person, but they don't interview the writer.
Writers,
and they're not there, man. So I think working to get to that place where you can actually see that process, I think you're absolutely right. I think it helps you structure a screenplay better, because a screenplay, listen, it's different, right? It's not like a book. A book is meant to be read. That is the purpose. That's the end game of it. No one is meant to read a screenplay. A screenplay is a blueprint for a film or a television show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the end game of a screenplay is a completely different entity. It's a film. It's a visual medium.
So how do you think we fix that? And we were talking off camera before we started on the podcast, and talking again about the writer strike and the difference between how directors get treated, how producers get treated, how actors get treated. versus how writers get treated.
Right.
What's your take on that, and how can we fix it or improve it?
Well, I think, obviously there's tons of folks that dream of being writers, right? It's a thing. People dig it. But it's not as hyped as being a director. It's not as hyped as being an actor. It's not as hyped as being a producer even. It's a different thing. And when you're talking about companies and studios, you're talking about money. You're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. And folks are looking to invest money so that they can make back double what they've put in. Mm-hmm. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make money. And audiences generate the money. So if you are Steven Spielberg and you've got this track record of directing these hit films, that's the guy. They're going to give that guy what he wants because they know when his name goes on a piece of paper, his name goes on a project, his name pops up, a Steven Spielberg film, people show up. People just show up, right? But like we were saying before, if you name a film that's your favorite film, most people can tell you who directed it, but they don't know who wrote it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it goes the opposite way towards actors. And I think that's why actors make the most money of anyone in Hollywood. Because if we talk about our favorite movies, or you go on the street and you ask anyone like about their favorite movies, mm-hmm. more likely than not, they know who was in it.
Oh, yeah.
And
absolutely.
they probably don't know who directed it or who wrote it. Right. We know because we're in the business, right. We're in the industry, like we really know right. the filmmakers. But like I did this with a friend and I asked him, who are your top 5 directors?
Yeah.
And he's like,
yeah.
I don't know. Like
right.
he had no idea. He's an architect, so he has no idea
right.
because of the film. And even with people who are in film, if you're not into directing, I think people in film know more, but definitely writers. You were asking me about a few movies. I had no idea who the writers
right.
was. But I think, to play devil's advocate, I think that is the writer's fault. Like that's their responsibility to create some way, somehow, you have to create a need for you in the business that you're in. So for example, in our business, if you are going to be a writer of the new age, let's say 2023, you're about to start on as a writer, you need to realize that, if they don't know who I am, it's not going to matter. And you were telling me a story about some rock star guy that came up with a pitch and wrote this thing and sent it into the studio and he got paid a shit ton of money because he was a famous person. Then you get paid as a famous person. So when you look at, I think one of the most successful writers that I really love is Shonda Rhimes. And she created Grey's Anatomy, Scandal, Bridgerton. She got paid. She had a huge deal with her production company to go in and get paid millions of dollars to create all these stories.
Right.
But I think she played it in a different way. With Grey's Anatomy, that was her like baby and her thing. And she was able to make a name for herself as a writer off of that show. So then she created Shondaland, which is like her production company, her entity of like all of these IPs that she created.
Right.
So I think that's the model. I'm pretty sure writers like that will start to pop up in the future. And if people don't realize that they have to create a brand some way, somehow, like what you're doing with now, you're taking your skills and going into writing books.
Right.
When you go into that world, like you were saying, it's a whole new world because now you are the author.
Right.
You're the god of that
right.
that world.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be really interesting when you come around and you try to develop those projects into series. You're the big daddy there. Like they can't replace you.
Yeah.
They can't move you aside.
Yeah.
So I think it's the writers, like you are taking steps to make sure that you are the one running the show.
Right. No, and I don't disagree with you. I think Shonda Rhimes is actually a really good example because when you're talking about television, it's a different ball game for writers in TV than it is in film. Mm-hmm. I think in film, the kings of film are directors because it's a visual medium. It's a director's medium. Mm-hmm. So no matter what, the director is deferred to. And that's something I learned when I started directing. So I'm writing things, right? And as I'm writing, it's like the folks I'm working with, everything's being questioned, right? It's like, well, should we do this? What about this character? Well, I don't know. But when I decided to direct what I wrote, I was right all the time. You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden I was right. And everything was like multiple choice. Yeah. So it was like set up for me the way books are set up for authors. It was like, well, what do you want? Well, I want this. Well, I can do it this way, this way, this way, this way. Which way would you like? I would like this way. And then everyone moved to do that.
Which, by the way, it sounds amazing, but if the right person is in that position, is awesome.
Right. Yes.
If the wrong person is placed in that position, they will crumble with the pain of having to make a decision.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's different. The stakes are higher. I just want people, like, I want the writers to get paid. I want them to make a shit ton of money. I want them to be happy. I want everyone to be happy and make movies. But we have to remember and realize the stakes are higher for these other positions. So you need to find a way to make the stakes higher for your position. So if you're the writer and you want to be in control, you need to find ways to be in control.
Well, I think I hear what you're saying, but I think it's a little bit different. I think the strike isn't for Shonda Rhimes. You know, it's not for Ryan Murphy. It's not for these juggernaut writers who have, like you said, created their own brands, created their own companies, made these mega million deals. It's for the people that work for them. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It's for the writers, especially in television, who have to clock in and day out to write these episodes. Because, you know, Shonda Rhimes, she's not writing all that stuff herself.
No, you know she has a team of people. Yeah.
She's got to have that team, and that team gets paid by what the companies give Shonda to pay them. And so I think it's about those people that are like, you know, for lack of a better term, the day workers, the ones that are coming in, doing their thing, because there's a lot of ways to become Shonda Rhimes. And one of those ways is to work for her. You know what I mean? One of those ways is to get in that staff room, to be able to pitch those stories, write those scripts, get that experience. And so those people are making a really massive, contribution to what it is. We look at Shonda Rhimes and we applaud her, as we should. But there's a whole staff of folk that are keeping Shonda where she is. She's keeping that show afloat. Grey's Anatomy's been on for 17,000 years. There are people that are writing those episodes. So I think the strike is more about making sure those people are taken care of. I don't think it's really about, we want to be in the limelight, because I don't think your average writer is looking for that.
I agree. No, I agree. I'm just saying that as insurance, to make sure that you don't have to be ignored by the studios or have to go on strike, you need to take the limelight. So if you're a writer, even if you're a staff writer, you need to find ways to make sure that your voice is heard. So I think, I agree with the strike. If you're not getting what you need, by any means necessary, play your cards and get what you need.
Yeah.
And a way to help you with that, so you don't have to go there, is you make sure that you're always on the limelight. Now, it's going to take sacrifice. When you're a director and you show up and you have 150 people and it's 4:00 in the morning and you're shooting a crazy place that you're paying $100K for the location, and you're burning $500,000 that day shooting. If you don't get what you need to get, it's all on you.
Right.
The writer, he already wrote it, So they don't have the same, their work doesn't have the same stakes. But without them, we don't get the movie. So they need to find ways to make sure that, hey, I'm writing this. How can you get attached on as a producer on that? How can you do work to get relationships with the actors, and then you come and bring them and you package the show? And You see what I'm saying?
I do. I
Like-
do see what you're saying, but I think we're talking about two different classes of people.
Yeah.
And I think this is what's so great about, I think this is what's so great about being young, because you're there with a purpose. You're looking to make this thing get done, and like you got a broader scope. There are some writers that don't have that broader scope. You know what I mean? Because everybody can't be Shonda Rhimes. Everybody
it's
can't
really
be
hard. Yeah.
a showrunner. Like everybody can't do that thing. But there are people that are really, really good at being directed toward what needs to be written. A friend of mine who is, I think he's a good writer, but he's not a good creator. So if he creates something, right? He comes up with the idea and he like nurtures it and puts it together. Inevitably, it's just kind of,
Yeah.
But you can give him a script of someone else's and ask him to punch it up. And it's awesome. Like he can take something that's already been structured and make it better. But to structure something himself, it's not what he does. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so these writers that are in these rooms, that's what they're doing. You know what I mean? It's not their world. They're there to bring up what's already been created. A lot of times in film, how often do you hear about a director being replaced in a film?
It happens, but it's not very often.
You know how often a writer gets replaced on a film script?
On almost every film. Yeah.
So it's not necessarily about stakes. It's the nature of what the system, it's the nature of how the system works. You write a script, you come up with an original idea, you sell it, everyone loves it, they think it's great, but maybe you haven't written anything that's been made yet, right? Which is no fault of your own. You've been working, you're doing it, you sold it, you came up with something they love. But now they're like, we're really gonna put some money into it, we're really gonna make this thing shine. So we're gonna bring somebody in who's done this before.
Yeah, it's also, there's
I mean?
a lot of backroom politics and things that happen. So let's say you sold the script.
Yeah.
I'm going to produce the movie, and then there's a new exec at the studio, and now they're taking over. So they're taking over production. They're going to look at the slate, and they're going to say, we like all of this, but we don't like Axel very much.
Right.
So like I need to make some changes. Like this is not working. So the executive is going to make changes.
Right.
They're just making business decisions.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I just want people to remember that we're gonna get always emotional with all of this because this is what we make.
Right.
So like, of course, like if I'm directing a movie and you tell me, hey, you cannot do it anymore, I'm gonna be like fucking pissed. But then once you are one layer above making the decisions, then you realize, and this happens to me like as a producer, when I'm producing something, I'm dealing with 5 different heads of departments that need different things.
Yep.
And you think that your world is the ultimate because that's all you know.
Right.
So that's all you know. Those are only the problems that you know.
Right.
But I'm moving this budget around to accommodate you and 5 other guys that need something like the things that you're asking me.
Right.
And sometimes sadly it's not even about you. It's just something is happening in the studio where someone needs to make a decision to show someone else that we're making changes because the studio is not going the way that it should be, or we hit some kind of like budget wall because at the end of the next fiscal year things need to change, so we need to put it in a turnaround. So there's a lot that happens that we don't know about. You know, when you're a kid in film school and you want to be a writer, you just don't hear about that.
Right.
But then you come here to Hollywood, you start working, and like I did a lot of work in TV as a location manager, and I learned a lot of shit that went down, bro. Like the stuff that happens behind of everyone trying to cut everyone's throat, and everyone is trying to throw everyone under the bus just because they want to survive. They don't want to get fired.
Right.
So the writer, it's really easy to blame the writer when things don't go well.
It really is. Yeah. Well, because, most of the time the writer's not there, right? Mm-hmm. So they don't have to be confronted. So it's easy to just go, it's the writer's fault.
This script is so bad.
Yeah, right? Because you're staring at the production designer, and you don't want to fight that dude because he's staring right at you. But we can all agree it's the writer's problem. Let's get rid of that dude.
Yeah,
but the first thing I ever did as an actor was a TV movie, Disney TV movie, right?
Okay.
So money should not be a problem. It's Disney, right? And we were supposed to shoot this thing in, I think it was Malaysia. We were going to shoot in Malaysia. Yes, man, right? I was all stoked. I didn't even know what Malaysia was.
I wouldn't be that stoked about going to shoot in Malaysia.
Yeah, but, it's Disney, and I'm 19, and it's whatever, man. Malaysia, that's great.
Let's go.
Then it was production calls, and we're going to shoot we're going to do it in Hawaii now.
Okay.
Okay. But that's still cool. It's Hawaii. That's cool. Okay. All right. Get my luau, your old leg cooking. And then they call a production call. And we're going to shoot it on Catalina Island.
On where?
Catalina Island.
Oh, right there?
Right there. Now, I don't know what happened between Malaysia and Catalina Island. Mm-hmm. But, production... Who knows who had to do what had to be cut. We can't spend this on this. There's another production that we're going to spend more money on. We need to take this away from this. These are the things. And this is the thing. And this is the thing that you were just talking about that I think is absolutely, completely true. These are corporations. They are set up to make money. The commercials on television, those are the things that bring in the money. And it's a little different now because, we've got streamers and television's a whole different ball game now. But there was a time when you could tell whether or not a show was going to get canceled or not. If you knew how the commercials worked. So if you were watching a show, and the commercials were Gillette razors or Coca-Cola, or toilet paper, right? Because they got tons of money. But when the commercials are for Volvo cars, these bigger items, they don't pay as much. They don't have as much money. Because you're paying per minute hundreds of thousands of dollars to get your product on this show so that the most amount of people see it. Right? I believe, I could be wrong, don't quote me, but I believe when Friends was at its height, companies were paying $750,000 for a 30-second spot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we got to get that money in. Yeah. That's how all this stuff keeps cooking.
And then you have syndication, which for people who don't know, when a show hits about 80, 90 episodes, they can enter syndication, which meant that then the show is going to have reruns.
Right.
But then you still get paid advertising money, so you still get royalties from all of that.
Right.
We don't have syndication anymore. When you have a streaming company, when you drop the whole season, that's it.
That's it.
They're done.
Right.
And something that has been happening also that is a problem for writers, but that most people don't know is for Netflix or Apple TV or Amazon Prime, any of the big streamers, it's more rewarding to have a new show every so often than to have a show that you just keep going on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
Because what happens is when you hit season 2, 3, 4, 5, you have to renegotiate all the deals with everyone.
Yeah.
So all your expenses go up
Yeah.
But you're not bringing in more subscribers to watch that new show.
Right.
Because it's just the same show, the same people. And that's something that it's like a blessing and a curse, because then you can't have these shows that run super long. You have some, but not as many as we used to. But now you have the possibility to bring in new shows, and you can buy new material, new IP, have new writers.
Sure.
So you do get an influx of like, new creators and like new things being made.
Right.
But it might not go to that writer. So when you were before, like years ago, when you go on season 3, 4, 5, 6, you start making like bank. You start making a lot more money.
Yeah.
Now you go back to square one.
Yeah.
Like you go back to zero, where you have to prove again that this new show can do well. So they have to manage their marketing and all that. So it's very complicated. I guess now that you're entering in a new stage of your career with books, how is that world working? I've done a little bit of work in the promotional side of books, not on publishing. And I'm really interested to like hear about what have you have learned, and like what are you excited about with that?
What really excites me about books, there's so much more material, you know. Like we were talking about with screenplays, right? Screenplays are they're blueprints for movies. They're, so they're structured in a certain way. You've got to get this entire story done within this certain amount of time, right? This certain amount of pages that have to be like structured out and set forth, and then you got to wrap it up and be done. And sometimes there's just more story to tell. With a book, you have that luxury.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Almost the opposite. Like the more pages you have, the better, right?
Well, depending. I mean, nobody is looking for a 150,000 word tome because they can't sell that book.
Well, but then we can split it up.
Yes, you can. But you still have to make sure that that first book, whatever your first 80, 90, 100,000 words, is a complete book. Because a lot of people are looking to make book series. But for publishers, that first book's got to do it, or else there's no series.
Yeah. What do you think are some of the myths that people believe when they're going into? Because I feel like people only hear, J.K. Rowling, she made like hundreds of millions of dollars with Harry Potter. I'm going to do the next Harry Potter. I'm going to be a gazillionaire.
I think it just really comes down to you putting in the work to make the best story that you can. You don't decide that it's the next Harry Potter. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't decide that. You decide to make a great story that you believe in, that you trust in. And then agent comes along because they believe it's the next one. And then they sell it to a publisher, and the publisher believes it's the next one. And then the publisher puts the book out, and then the audience decides if they believe it's the next one. But for you as the writer, your job is to write the best story you can. And once you do that, the agent shows up. And then the agent shows up, and you start editing, and you start going through and making it better. And the job of the agent through the editing process is not to change your story. It's not to make it something else, because you're not worried about the same stuff you're worried about when it comes to film and television. You don't have budgetary constraints. You don't have to worry about like who's attached. You don't have to worry about, we can't shoot there. It's just a book. The end game is the book. It's just going to be read. Anything else is gravy. If Hollywood shows up and pays you a ton of money for your book, who cares what they do to it? It's like, that's gravy. The end game is here. So what they're trying to do is take what you've created and make it as good as it can possibly be, so that readers can get lost in that book. And I think that's the biggest difference between writing a book and writing a script, because you're not writing a script for readers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're writing a blueprint that executives and directors can follow, and it allows them to imagine what can be on screen, and they can say, okay, I see this. Mm-hmm. I can see this. I can market this. I can sell this.
So now talking about story, I agree with you 100%. What do you think are those like things that make a story like, yes, like I want
Man,
this?
you know, to me, man, relatability. Honestly, I don't care what genre it is. I don't care if it's sci-fi, I don't care if it's fantasy, horror, whatever it is. It's about the characters. It's about being able to relate to those characters. Star Wars is like a mega billion-dollar franchise. It's all crazy and sci-fi and planets and aliens and crazy. We fell in love with it because it's about a father and a son. It's about Luke and Darth Vader, and then find out that's his dad. That's what it's about. That's why we love it. You know what I'm saying? It's that relatability. You come down to all the stories that people absolutely, positively love. It's those characters. Because if you create a great character, people will follow that character anywhere. They'll follow it anywhere. Now, yes, a great story and a great plot that creates obstacles and challenges and adventure for that character, absolutely necessary, absolutely helpful. But you gotta be able to relate to the people this stuff is happening to.
So in your case, how do you throw in that relatable as element to it? Because for me, I agree with you 100%. So I remember one of my films, I was working with a script about this girl dying and going to the afterlife, and then she had a chance to like send a message to someone. Mm-hmm. And then when I took the script on and I was going to direct it, I was thinking, well, I would automatically think of my mom.
Yeah.
So then I just thought about my mom, and like, so I changed some things of how we were filming based on what I would want to hear and see and all that. Mm-hmm. And I was just thinking of like just me and my mom. Mm-hmm. Like, so not even like, are people gonna like this? Or like, I wasn't thinking like, right. I was keeping it simple, man. Yeah. So like, what are some little things that you throw in? Like you were telling me a little bit about the new book that you're working on. What are things that you say, okay, I'm going to add this in? And like,
you know, I think when I was acting, and I taught a little bit of acting privately, and I would always tell people, I would always say, you know, acting is your emotions dressed up in someone else's words. That's all it is. You didn't write the words, but they're your emotions. Because if the script is like anywhere near halfway good, it's about human emotion. And we still operate as humans the same way we did centuries ago. We still want the same stuff. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think when you're writing, it's the same thing. You're creating these worlds, you're creating these characters, but it's your emotions. It's like, what drives you? You know what I mean? Like, my book really is a revenge fantasy. Something made me angry. Something made me very angry. And I was able to take that, channel it into a character, into a story about this character wanting justice and not being able to get it. And so, as the writer, I gave him an avenue where he could have power to exact justice.
That's pretty cool. That sounds pretty cool.
And then you have a book. But you know what I'm saying? Like, and then you add things into it. Like, there's family. Like, is he the only one that's suffering injustice? Or are there others that he cares about that are also suffering injustice? Is there a woman that he is in love with, but he cannot help the way he would like to because of the injustice that he's dealing with? Is he limited or blocked from doing the thing that he wants to do? Is there a child? Does he need to get this situation rectified so that his child doesn't have to live the way he's having to live. Right?
Yeah, nah, you got me now.
Right? And so now it's like, okay, well, what do I do? I'm blocked on every corner. I'm not allowed to do this. I'm punished if I do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. And then someone says, here's this. Here's this power, this supernatural power. And it's villainous, and it's evil, and it's brutal. But it'll get you what you want. But you have to make the ultimate sacrifice in order to use this power. So now how bad do you want it?
Dang. Poof, God, that's the trailer right there. That's good, man.
So I think that's the thing. I think you want to find these things within yourself that you feel deeply, that you can then translate and turn into these stories. This is why I think horror and fantasy and sci-fi are such great genres, because they allow you to explore a lot of different issues in a more abstract way, you know, especially horror. Like, to me, horror is like punk music, you know, punk's crazy and it's out there and it's loud and it's rebellious, but it's almost always talking about something.
I never thought about it that way. For me, horror, like, I'm not that into horror movies. Like,
Yeah.
I've tried. I think the only horror movie that I like, and I don't even know if you call it a horror movie, is Get Out. Like,
Yeah.
that's the only movie that I'm like, oh, wow,
Yeah.
this is really good.
But again, that's a horror movie that's talking about a real issue. It's talking about a really socially relevant, did I say that right?
Irreverent.
Not irreverent,
Relevant.
relevant issue. I get, my brain stops sometimes. And there was another film that got a lot of controversy, but it did the same thing. It's called The Hunt.
I haven't seen that one.
It's a great film, but it's about God. It struck me so much, and now the whole thing that I want to say is escaping me. But essentially, and I might have this backward, it was about people being hunted, but the people being hunted were of a conservative political view,
So,
and
like,
the hunters were liberals.
okay.
And they were hunting because they felt that these conservatives were a blight on society. And so the only way to get rid of them and do justice for the country is to kill them. So we must hunt them. So we're talking about a horror movie, but we're also talking about a political state that's really relevant in our country right now, because we're very much at odds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I feel like those genres allow those issues to be explored, and just in a more, to me, in a more thought-provoking way. Because if you just did a story about this Republican and this liberal and they don't like each other, it's like, okay, well, I can watch CNN and see that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But to like take it and put it in this whole different element, it allows you to, oh, okay, well, I can see, because it's a story. So you've got to show both points of view.
Yeah, and it can come across as a caricature,
Right.
Because then, like, you just don't, like, you won't buy it.
You'll
so
lose your audience.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it allows you to explore those different things. You know what I mean? And be like, okay, I see that. You know, in my book, the oppressive character, the antagonist, he's got a purpose too. You know, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm doing these things that people look at and they say that they're villainous. They say that they're horrible and they're brutal. And we know that they are. But at the same time, I'm building something. I've got a family. My dad was a piece of shit. I'm not going to follow that because I've got a son. I need to leave a legacy for him. And I'm not letting anything get in the way with that. So whatever you think you should have or whatever you think your human rights are secondary to what I want. Because this is mine. Everything is mine. I own this. I run it. So, okay, I'm seeing where this person is coming from. There's a different thing. So, you know, it allows your reader or your viewer to sort of sit back and go, wow, okay, that's where the juice is. Because you're bringing up that stuff from your own feelings, your own emotions. And if they're relatable enough, it hits the person that you're reading. You know what I mean? That's what you want to do. You want to hit that person where you live. Because more often than not, they're living in that same place. Whether they're on the opposite side of what you're feeling or not. You know what I mean? You want to hit that space. And you can only hit that space if you're coming from it authentically with yourself. Yeah. You know?
That's awesome. And I think that's what the power of stories, and that's why we need to keep doing this and keep doing what we're doing. And I think like talking about all of this and seeing those movies, as long as the people making the film have like an honest desire to connect with a human part, I think that advances and it makes everything better. The thing that I'm afraid is when people produce pieces and they have a biased view, because stories are really powerful. Yeah. So if you don't realize that you don't know everything and that whatever you see and how you see the world is always biased, so you need to be open and try to find, like the way that you're trying, bring in, okay, this story from this side and this other story from this side, and trying to see it from both sides. And then I'm still going to have a winner and a hero and a bad guy, but I'm going to play it in a way where you see both. I think those are powerful.
You have to have that.
The thing I'm afraid is when people don't have that, and they try to either make this side be dumb and they're just plain evil. No one is 100% plain evil. Right. Like that's just not human nature. Right. And no one is 100% lovey-dovey amazing. Right. There was a film that was very interesting about World War II has always been in the movies where the Germans are bad and like everyone is going and shoot them. Right. So we had this movie on the Western Front where they tell the story from the German side of view. And it was very interesting to see it because they showed these kids that are in school and this military guy comes over and he's just like hyping them up. And they think they're going to like defend their country and like defend their honor of their family and to like become men. Yeah. So they all enlist and they just go and they get sent to the front of the line and they're just dying. They don't even know what they're fighting. Right. And it was really interesting to see that film because we all know what happened in that war and we know that history repeats itself and all of that. But it's very interesting to see that with stories you can do that and you can bring a new perspective. But we just have to be open and remember that, hey, my perspective is probably not 100% right. Even if I'm a big chunk of what I think or believe is good. Right. And I think having that open debate or that conversation is what is going to eventually help. I come from another country, like I came to America, and to me, America is like the best place in the world. And to me, I just become sad whenever I hear people saying that America is horrible, like we're so divided, we're so terrible, we're so bad. I think we just need to talk it out. We just need to like have a conversation and have people from both sides try to find a way to be good together, because we're not going to be good in the future. Like 100 years from now, if we keep fighting against each other, it's not going to be good for anybody.
You know, I mean, I think everything old is new again, right? You know, and everybody has a different experience. And I think the thing that we forget sometimes is the power of individuality. You know what I mean? Like, your experience has been a great one, and there's nothing wrong with that. Someone else's experience maybe hasn't been so great, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But those experiences are what form your perception, right? If you grow up and, you know, every time you go to the refrigerator, your mom's like, "Oh, Chris, what would you like? What can I get you? This feels great." But every time you go to the refrigerator, your mom's like, "What the hell are you doing in there? You got enough food. You already ate." You're going to have a different reaction. You're going to have a different perception. It's just going to be different because your experience is different. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think understanding, is always good. Having the understanding that everyone has a different experience and your perception is important, and I think it's good, but I don't think you can impose it on other folks. You know what I mean? Like, just because something hasn't happened to you doesn't mean it doesn't happen. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Just because you don't believe in something doesn't mean others don't. You know what I mean? Like, I think those are the things that sort of help open us up to humanity. You were talking about the Germans. I had an acting coach who told me that he had never seen a decent performance of anyone portraying Hitler. And he said it's because he is so demonized around the world that the actor always plays that. The actor always plays result. But the thing is, the asshole never believes he's an asshole. You know what I mean? The asshole is always doing something for a purpose. Now, all these other people might be like, you're an asshole, but the asshole doesn't think he's an asshole. Hitler didn't think, yeah, I'm going to screw the world. Hitler was like, I'm going to save Germany. Yeah. But nobody plays the character that way. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So regardless of what we all know, the facts of the world, if we're talking about story, if we're talking about characters, you have to explore that duality. And I think in writing, it's the same thing. You have to explore that duality in all of your characters, or else your characters just become boring. It's just a boring thing. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I'm doing this because I want justice and everything I do is good. Yay. But if this thing that I want so badly makes me go down some paths that aren't so great, that I start to question who I am even, but I still got to see it through because I can't find another way to get to where I want to go. Well, now I got to stick with this guy, Mm-hmm. I got to see how far is he going to go? I know his intention is good. How far is he going to go down this rabbit hole? And am I going to like him when he comes out of the other side? Those are the kinds of questions make people turn the page.
Yeah.
Right.
And even if I don't like him, if I can understand why he's doing it.
Or respect it.
Yeah, you respect it. Like that's some of the best storytelling right there. Like when you can get me to like go for the anti-hero. Like, did you ever watch Breaking Bad?
I did, yes.
Bro, it's like I wanted him to like burn the world down. I wanted him to like be bad and like in a good way.
Well, that's true. I mean, Dexter's the same way. Dexter's another great example. I mean, there's a guy who's killing people. Other bad people. He's a police officer. He's killing people. He's murdering people. And it's, those are the kinds of things that really sort of make you start to question your own stuff, right? Like, okay, how do I align with this? Like, how am I in check with all of this? You know what I mean? And I think that's what makes things compelling, whether you're watching them or reading them or whatever it is. But I think duality, because we all have it, is incredibly interesting. And I think it's part of character development. And I think it helps make really good story.
For sure. Well, Markus, one last question.
Yes.
If you could do anything in the world and money is not an issue, time is not an issue, you can do whatever you want, what would you do?
You mean project-wise or just anything?
I don't know. Whatever.
Okay. So there's this house in it's on a hill in Beverly Hills. It's $60 million.
60?
Yeah. It's gorgeous. It's got this pool that runs almost the length of the entire house It's got these waterfalls and whatnot. It's beautiful. I would just move there and write stories when I wasn't just sleeping by the water.
That sounds like a pretty good plan. Man.
That's what I would do.
Thank you so much, Markus, for coming on the show.
Of course, man. Thank you, Axel.
Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this episode, check out this other interview with my buddy Tyler Morey, where we talk about scripts, screenwriting, and the whole thing. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you guys on another episode.